I've got the wires just hanging. Hello, everybody. It is time to discuss a few roster questions from listeners like you. We asked earlier this week on Twitter if you could give us some questions about your rosters, things you want to know for 2022 and beyond, and you came through. It's time to get to it. It's time for Dingers!
This is Dingers, way more than fantasy baseball. We keep it real when we talk and knock it straight out the park. Let's see the stats, what's the average draft position? What kind of plays you making? Check the wins above replacement, check the lineups and the points. This I gotta see, what's your path to victory? Are they aiming for a dynasty? Get points going head to head, please don't do me no favors. We're always watching waivers, ain't no minor league, this is major, yeah. Dingers, let's go.
Welcome to Dingers, the only fantasy baseball podcast for smart people. It's not just Justin Steele that wins you championships. That's why week in and week out we're delivering tips and strategies to help you live that straight up OG lifestyle. Joined again, as always, by Robbie Baseball from the Murder Room. What's happening, Robbie?
Baseball's back! Baseball's back! Okay, that was not my best.
That just reminded me so much of the Let's Go Blue Jays guy that sits out with his pail and like how that guy still has the drive to get out there and play pails and hit Let's Go Blue Jays. And I think he actually has a full set of drums now. But like the motivation and like commitment to that goal to say the same thing over and over again at every single Jays home game.
He is a fan unlike any other, but the fans are the ones who are now the happiest, I think, because we're going to get to see baseball. Fantasy baseball players, we're going to get to see baseball. Ty, our surf league, maybe we'll go to a baseball game. We'll see. The world is changing.
The commitment of one of the members to come in from the East Coast of Canada, it's just like, I'll just drive in. No big deal. I love it. Love it.
Never been to a Jays game. I'll come.
Friend of the show, Woody, like all over it. Love it. Love to hear that. That's a next level commitment to A, fantasy baseball, and B, the Blue Jays. That's just excellent. Love to hear it.
Definitely. So we did get a question from Woody. We also got questions from several others. Thank you again. Of course, you can find us live streaming right now on the YouTube. Find us on the Twitter at DingersPod. Find Ty at TourneyBoss or me at Robbie Baseball 1. We will help you out with your teams, your questions, your rosters. What's going on? It is a fun, exciting time. There are free agents signing all the time. And we got a bunch of questions to cover tonight with this mailbag episode. But before we do that, cleanse that palate.
A long time ago, someone decided to put stuff in glass bottles. In some of these bottles, they put juice or milk, and that was stupid. Today, only alcohol and a few other products remain in the containers from the gods. It's time for beers and bourbon, because good advice only comes in a bottle.
What do you got, Robbie? Are we on like the fancy drink again tonight, or are you going back to the?
No, I'm still rich. So Crown Float.
Rich.
I'm rich, bitch. So
you think this is a float? You should see my bank account, baby.
This is from Taw's Winery. It's their cider that I'm having as the bottom. 100% Ontario apples, baby. And I have it, of course, with the granddaddy of the stouts, the Guinness. And I'll get 2 pints out of this. Ty, what are you? What libation are you enjoying?
I'm starting with Elijah Craig this evening, but I feel as if I'm going to finish that and then mix it up with a glass of Basil Hayden. So not one or the other tonight, a little bit of both is what I'm thinking.
Well, it's happy time, so why not, mix and match, right? These are good days for everybody.
And I am going stateside in a couple weeks here, so I'm very excited to pick up a non-LCBO sanctioned bottle of bourbon.
That sounds like fun.
Step.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. So one of the things before we dive in that I very quickly just wanted to cover was on Twitter at Baseball Pods. Chris is the gentleman's name who does the fantasy baseball bracketology for Fantasy Baseball Podcast. So it's a great way to promote a podcast or give some new podcasts a shot, or some podcasts like ours that are in a niche market where we aren't getting the CBS 75,000 downloads per podcast. A little bit of room to grow, to show off what you do a little bit. So it's a great idea. The first year, I know it picked up. What was it, 2020? And we were bounced in the first round very quickly. But the hype built up on Twitter, where there were like thousands of votes as the tournament went on, which was awesome. And then last year, the same thing was kind of happening again. It got tarnished a little bit because one of the guys at MLB Moving Averages, John L., who does a lot of stuff on Twitter, used to write for The Athletic. Whatever he's doing now, I don't care. But he reached outside the fantasy baseball circle to get votes, which is kind of, that's one of those rule number one of fantasy baseball, don't be a dick things, is, rule number one of a podcast voting contest is have people that listen to the podcast vote for you. So, but I'm bringing this up, of course, because Ty, we won our round one matchup. We took out the operating room. They were DOA at 10 p.m. or whenever the voting finished. And we will require our listeners' help one more time, depending on when this one airs. Monday is the scheduled time for the face-off.
Is it safe to say that last year we lost to moving averages and now we're the moving average?
We didn't lose to them. It was completely different. They were last year we went up against
who did we lose to?
Roto's high stakes heat. And that was super close. If you recall, it was like 51-49 or 52-48 or something like that. It was very close. Yeah. It was great because, we made friendships. We had actually had Dave on that podcast, or on the podcast, the week that aired. And he was kind of like debating on promoting or not.
If only Dave would have pissed off all of Twitter before that matchup.
Yeah, they all would have listened to be like, what's this guy's deal? And the only reason that I knew about all the stuff with John, the MLB Moving Averages guy, because he went on High Stakes Heat podcast and went off about it. And I thought, this man is very confident for what he's saying. And although I didn't agree with it, your opinion is your opinion. So it's yours to have. But it was just kind of interesting to me. And I love the fact that people are passionate about this. And, we're passionate about the fact that we don't have strangers, as far as we know, voting for us. We think it's our listeners, and that's great. So we're hoping that you guys are able to step up one more time for us in round two, because it's back to the 2020 matchup that we had against Bat Flip Crazy, which is Toby and Bubba. And we want to take them out this time. And I know there are, like Ty, we were talking about this beforehand, there are a lot of rumors that they are the reason the lockout took so long. Just a lot of things that they were doing on their podcast makes sense, right? It's mid-March. They're just now doing their starting pitcher previews. No one else would do it this late. It's draft season. They knew they had time to slow play it, and they did that.
Very
we can't confirm. We can't confirm or deny. But either way, again, this is a fun thing for us, and it's great that we won because we care about records and being dynasty. We're the slow build, right? We're the slow build. So this is the third year we've been in this. It's time to make some hay.
Well, we play the long game, Robbie. That's like everybody rushed last night to Twitter and to podcasting. And we waited till tonight. It's the long game. 1 day delay is long game in the excitement of CBA coming to a close or to an open, whatever prospect that needs to. You get it.
The conversation's coming to a close. The baseball will be opening up. So April 7th. The countdown is on.
There will be some careers that come to a close for those free agents that can't find a place to play. But they also might be on. I was going to say they also might be on your roster.
Well, do you want to mention the one guy that you are pleased as punch is now in the Blue Jays organization? Finally, they solved the first base issue.
What's our ring of excellence called? Is it the ring of excellence?
Level of excellence.
Level of excellence. That future level of excellence member Greg Bird signed a minor league deal with the Toronto Blue Jays.
Bird is the word, Bubba.
I mean, everybody was like, yes, left-handed first baseman, desperately need Freddie Freeman. Solution? Enter Greg Bird.
Desperately need. Don't worry. Yeah. Shapiro's like, guys, I got it.
I mean, let's remember though, this guy had a very promising start to his career, and then he went like 3 full seasons without hitting a baseball in consecutive games. And then he fouled one off his foot and pretty much ended any chance of resurrecting the minor league success. So, here we are now looking at depth for obvious reasons. And now there's still an expectation that the Jays will sign something. So there's that expectation for many teams in free agency, but we've got lots of questions of our own, Robbie.
And if you're listening to us for the first time, this is a great indication of what we get excited about are the players that nobody cares at all about. Greg Bird's 2021 and the PCL, which Ty talked about it before. It's a hitters league. Pitchers have inflated numbers hitters have inflated numbers. It hurts the pitcher stat lines that you got to look around. But Greg Bird had a good year. Of course, he was with the Rockies AAA affiliate.
27 bombs, hit 263 or something like that.
Yeah, he was a perfectly serviceable guy. So he's gonna just be part of it. But that's the kind of thing we talk about, because depending on your league settings, you might have a 40-man roster, 35. You might be looking for that outside edge. You might be like, you know what? I think the Jays are probably going to bench Vlad because of that D. And if they do, it's time for the Birds to fly into town. Of course, we're joking, but anyway, just that's it. Well, that's what we cover. We cover everybody because nobody else seems to. So we will talk about the guys that don't make sense for everybody, but for some of you, you're going to be like, it's going to pop off for you because we're doing the work for you. So tonight we've got a few deep dive questions. We've got some quick fire stuff. Ty, are you ready? I'm going to fire some at you.
Let's do it.
Okay. So this is the hardest question for Ty, because I will not let you elaborate. All of these questions right here. What do the New York Yankees do at shortstop post lockout?
2 options. One is Trevor Story. I think that's the obvious one for them. 1-year pillow deal to let Story rebuild and also wait for their prospects. The second option is a trade for Paul DeJong from St. Louis.
Oh, okay. What does Houston do at shortstop?
If Trevor Story signs a long-term deal, it will be there. I think Correa is still a very significant reality. If it's not one of those 2 guys, I really honestly don't know. They've got a gap between their prospects. Shea Whitcomb's at least 2 years away. He could be rushed, but probably not ready. And they don't really have anybody notable that can move quickly this season. So, I mean, they're going to be free agent. Paul DeJong, again, could be an option there. Very reasonable for them as well. And then I think they're kind of grasping at straws. Might be a guy like who's our defensive guy that we like that nobody likes?
Santiago Asnabal.
No, not him. The
Andrelton Simmons signed today with the Cubs, which was the one that I thought might be interesting and strikes it off. My quick interruption is that Jerry DiPoto has yet to make a trade in roughly 30 hours. And I could absolutely see, because they've got a good relationship with Houston, I know, same division, they could send some of that Dylan Moore type shortstoppy multi-position depth to Houston. I just don't know what would come back.
Iglesias was the guy I was trying to think of as an option for short.
Oh, Jose Iglesias. Yeah, that's a great example. Okay, and I don't think he has signed elsewhere at this moment.
No, he hasn't.
All right, next one up. Ty, will Texas get a free agent closer or trade for a closer?
I don't think so. And they have some interesting looks like depth or roster fodder in that bullpen, but they have some sneaky good pieces. Like Joe Barlow's okay. Taylor Hearn is reasonable, although I think a lot of people want him to move to the rotation at some point. Your boy, Dennis Santana is kicking around over there.
Man.
But then
4 years I was waiting on Santana as a Dodger.
They've just got a bunch of like interesting like quad A guys right now that are former like starters that I think could really fill the role. Like Alex Spees comes to mind off the top of my head as a guy that has a little bit of back end upside. And there's a couple other guys that are eluding me at the moment, but I've done this drill before, not knowing that this question was on our quickfire list. So I know they have 2 or 3 other guys that you shouldn't know. Like they're not going to be household names, but they're guys with sneaky upside. And I'm gonna ruin a couple people's days with this one. Spencer Howard is a very realistic closer option.
I will not let you ruin my day with that because I will ignore it. Spencer Howard for the rotation. Okay, if not Texas, sorry, where does Kenley Jansen sign? We know Kershaw is now back in LA. We know Bauer's officially been placed on whatever list, so he's out of town while they debate whether he's suspended or not. LA throws the money away. What's up with Kenley?
Boston or Washington. I think both of those would be very reasonable options.
I think it's fair at this moment to say that Fangraphs or Roster Resource, which is under Fangraphs now, which is probably the most popular place people reference for fantasy when looking at roster construction, they have Garrett Whitlock, last year's Boston Rule 5 success story, who was a former Yankee farmhand, as the closer. I don't think that's going to happen. The guy that did it last year, Matt Barnes, is a wily vet who did a good job. I think it's still going to be his job because the managers that we know, which is at this moment 29 of 30 managers. Actually, you know what? Even Gabe Kapler did it last year. He went to Jake McGee. He went to the wily veteran more often than not. So I will say that you don't want to put the ball in the hands of a guy like Whitlock when Matt Barnes is just sitting right there and did it last year. But Kenley Jansen, that would be a big move for Boston. Interesting.
I think it'd be a smart move. They lost a lot of games down the stretch. That bullpen came off the rails.
It looked like they were trying to miss the playoffs. We were joking about it last year. None of the teams in the AL East were trying to win.
Well, the reality is these guys were all one slot ahead of where they should be in a bullpen, right? And it showed really clearly down the stretch. Kenley would help bring that back to where it needs to be.
Okay, next question. Where, not including Toronto because we talked too much about them, where does Conforto land?
See, it's a tough one because I do think Toronto's the most logical.
Can't say it.
High level spot. So there's a couple options. We don't know what San Francisco is going to do with their outfield, so there's obvious opportunity there. He would be a reasonable right field to help cover the triangle, like borderline center fielder, corner outfield kind of guy. That could be one option, and that would be a very reasonable fit. Miami keeps talking about upgrading outfielders, and I don't think that's the right fit, but I'm going to say it's at least palatable. Cincinnati desperately needs outfielders at this point because they have all those really crappy ones, and they're going to probably lose the only good one that they had. That can hit from both sides, or can hit pitchers from both sides. Sorry. And then I think really the only other logical option in my mind is something like an Oakland, Seattle option. But I mean, if you're in Oakland, you're probably a 1-year deal.
Definitely a 1-year deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's the thing. Like, and Conforto has to ask himself, like, can I get a 2 or 3 year deal for the money that it's worth? Or am I better doing a 1-year deal? Because if it's a 1-year deal, you have a lot of options, right? And at the end of the day, I don't know. And I say this, and I know I'm not supposed to, but I do think if it comes down to a 1-year deal for a top end left-handed stick, I think Toronto will outbid people on that one.
Okay, we have to end it here because you were not supposed to say the J. So next one up, will Oakland's Matt Chapman be traded before opening day? It's just a yes or no. Okay. Will Matt Olson of Oakland be traded before opening day? Yes. Okay. Where, Ty, will Kikuchi pitch in 2022?
The metaverse, maybe, hopefully.
With the videos I've seen of people out there who are in the metaverse, that's not safe. And Kikuchi already has some potential injury issues. So I am going to say that he is bound and destined to be a very late signing. Now I'll say that and he'll sign by the time this thing goes, because I think teams are going to basically have guys come into camp and be like, he was at whatever the price was, $6 million, whatever his 1-year price would be. I think he let's pull the trigger and get him in here.
I think he could be a Mets back end rotation guy. I think they need a little bit of like stable pitching in the back end of that. And in a guy that they could sign for cheap enough that if one of their other guys outperforms, they're not super upset on what they spent here. So I think that would be probably
a lot of injury risk with the Mets, right? Or rest, whatever. Okay, there we go. So Mets will call on that one. With the new rookie rules in place, will Rosny Contreras start the year in Pittsburgh? Now, for those who don't know, there is some detail out about it. I saw a few things, so I don't know, Ty, how much you know specifically about the rookie rule, but it basically has the idea that if a player receives rookie of the year votes, they get a full year of service time, despite the actual number of, at bats or games or whatever for the year. So if you think a player is going to be able to come in and help you, basically, if you think a prospect is good, there is no benefit to you suppressing them in theory. The other thing is that you can suppress them so long that they wouldn't get a vote or vote the number of votes required. So with that in mind, I'll just say the question again. With these rules in place, do you think Rosny Contreras starts the year in Pittsburgh? And again, he is a starting pitcher.
I think there's a very low likelihood that he starts. I think he's just not quite ready to be thrown into an opening day expectation. And I think just from a pressure scenario alone, I think they'll keep him out for the early part of the season. I don't think he's long for AAA. I don't think he'll be down there long. I think they will just keep him off opening day for the purposes of not putting him in the cold and the pressure of being one of the guys they're going to lean on in Pittsburgh's rotation moving forward. I just don't think that's the right move for that organization.
And to be clear, at this moment in time, and I just checked, I got 4 of the 5 potential starters right without looking. Here are they. Here they are. Words is good. Jose Quintana, free agent signing, is their opening day starter. JT Brubaker, followed up by Zach Thompson, who we talked quite a bit about this offseason as a under the radar guy. Bryce Wilson, who came over in a trade last year with Atlanta and had good and bad outings, more bad than good. And Mitch Keller, who has been just a train wreck, but still has that like advanced stat potential to him. So
is he the hardest thrower in a controlled setting on Twitter? Is that fair?
What?
There was just videos circulating of him off season just throwing absolute gas against no hitter in a controlled setting.
No, you're right. And that's one of the problems, right? Is that when you see video of some guys, it just skews you. So anyway, just to say that rotation, it is absolutely in flux because Keller, you can't bank on. Bryce Wilson, you can't bank on. Zach Thompson, who was with Miami for a portion of last year, was okay. But again, not a 30 starter guy in MLB with experience. Jose Quintana, absolute veteran signing to trade if you can. And then Brubaker is 28 years old and was or is part of the Pittsburgh system. So I don't want to see Contreras come up right away if they don't think he's ready or if they don't want to let him pitch the rest of the year in the rotation. Let him start slowly, and then when he does come up, just keep him up. Like that's my preference with all the guys, because after seeing what Aaron Sanchez had happen to him, it's just burned in my brain until we see the success story on the other side, where you have a guy come in, then you move him to the bullpen because his innings got so crazy, and then the next year and the year after that and the year after that, he's still good. We didn't get to see that. I just
don't know why you would rush him up. You got a guy like Jared Eichhoff in AAA, who's probably or in the depth level of AAA, who's far more likely, in my opinion, to be that fifth guy. And you have to assume we're probably going to see promotions from at least one of Quinn Priester, Carmen Mudzinski, and Tanaj Thomas. You got to assume those couple of guys are going to be put together in AAA to start the year. So I don't know why you're in a rush to start the service clock for Contreras when you've got those couple of guys coming together. Someone has to get there first, but
the rush would be just the fact that with the system in place now, with the voting of being able to give the control, right? It's just a matter of, would you want him to come up? I would say basically at all, 8 weeks or less of the season is kind of, I think, the suppression line now, which I think, again, like there'll be more information that I can actually read to fully understand this at a later date. But if you think the guy's going to be good enough to get votes, you need to just put him up, I guess, is the thing.
The one thing people always forget, though, is that some of these guys just need a little extra seasoning, and that extra couple of weeks in the spring camp that a lot of them get is valuable before the AAA season starts, right? They go through some educational stuff and some, a little bit of technique stuff. and they're not thrown right into a major league season like that. That is very, very valuable for some of these guys. It's also a great way to control total innings if you intentionally delay the start to their season, right? So I think that's it. The one thing I will add, and this might be his saving grace, is if they do expand the first month rosters like they're talking about, then that might force him into the conversation for a spot here or there. But I do think he'll go back down and come back up after that.
Okay. All right. So now we're just going to go with the better man. This should be the Pearl Jam segment sponsored by Eddie Vedder. Who will be the better man, Ty, at the end of the season? Will the better man be Strasburg or Verlander?
Verlander.
Yates, Kirby Yates, or Ken Giles?
I don't want either of them. I don't know what to do there. I'll go with Yates because he throws a splitter. I think that's the tiebreaker.
All right. Sale or Jameson Taillon?
This hurts me, but Sale. I think that's the obvious one in my opinion.
I liked this one because I know that you don't like either, but you've extra not liked Sale. So there we go.
Yeah, I went with never mind. I'll leave it.
This one I think is a little bit more polarizing. Jazz Chisholm or Alberto Mondesi?
Mondesi. I think he is the person that people are unbelievably low on that has more upside than anyone wants to admit.
All right,
trust maybe is a better way.
Yeah, okay. Here is a good one for the Sluggers. Hunter Renfroe or the Franimal, Franmil Reyes with Cleveland?
Renfroe because of the lineup. I think he's going to be protected in a way that he hasn't been in his entire career.
All right, we've got Hunter Renfroe of Milwaukee. So the better first baseman. Get it? Better man, better first baseman. Joey Votto or Jesus Aguilar of Miami?
I'm going to say Votto just because I desperately want Lewin Diaz to outplay Aguilar.
I agree on that point. My original vote for Votto was strictly Canadian, and we saw a picture of him today in a plaid shirt. Thank you, Joey. Who will be better? Newly minted LA boys. I mean, one just went back, but we've got Thor versus Kershaw.
I mean, you got to go with the GOAT. I don't know how you even possibly choose Thor in that one.
Oh, wait, sorry, what? So Ty, just for the record, is taking Kershaw. So lesser known outfielder guys, both had a bit of time last year. Older, Rafael Ortega with the Cubs, center fielder, or shot early in the season at playing time is going to need to prove it to stay up. Jose Siri with Houston. Ty, who will be the better man?
I like Jose Siri because I think there's going to be more competition in that Chicago outfield than people think.
Okay. And I want to just clarify because I know I've talked about Siri a little bit, and a few people are like, why do you love him so much? He's been batted around teams. Yeah, that's why I love him so much, because everybody's forgotten about him as a prospect. Like, I think his peak as a Reds prospect was like MLB.com's like, the 90th to 100th top prospect. I think that was his peak, and that may have been like as far back as 17 even. I don't know. It was a long time ago. But that's what I like about him, is the fact that he's a professional baseball player now, and I think he's just got himself together. And I'm interested in that. Ortega's a similar guy. He kicked around a bit, which I thought is why they paired up well together. But it looks like Ortega's got like the shot, right? He's got the position for playing time. But Ty agrees with me that there's a little bit more upside to Jose Siri. Even in his cup of coffee last year, Siri's 5 categories of helpfulness. He just needs more time. And we'll see if he gets it, him or Chas McCormick for center field at Houston at the start. We'll see.
And don't forget, he has 5 years of like international seasoning as well, right? So he's not completely, just a minor leaguer, right? He's seen the world a little bit differently. Has a ton of experience, and guess what? He plays great defense. So always a good formula to steal some at bats.
Definitely. Now this one is fun. Who is the better man, Ty, at the end of the season? We're counting the season end totals. All right. Acuna or Nick Madrigal?
I mean, I'm going to take Acuna because I think his value surpasses Madrigal by June.
Oh.
I mean, I like Madrigal. He's a hit first and almost a hit only guy. So that's the only, I mean, if you're in a 5x5 or a roto and you need hits average kind of conversation, then Madrigal's a guy you want to take a look at. But as a 1v1, this is a no doubter.
Yeah, and I really asked just because it's the amount of time people think Acuna is going to miss, right? Because in drafts, there's like a 285 ADP difference in Dynasty. Madrigal's got more value because he was drafted high once upon a time. So whoever has him in said league values him and is now trying to cling to that high average that he can provide, which of course is a big thing, right? When you're getting a bunch of guys who are just doing three true outcome baseball, one guy who's slapping the ball around and beating the system is important. Now, the rest of those categories needs to come up, and as his first full year as a Cub and first full MLB season, it will be interesting to see how the Cubbies play him. But we know who Acuna is.
Yeah, and one of the things that you and I have talked about, because you're an Acuna guy, I'm lesser so, but I think one of the things that I think you might see this year is you might see Acuna come up earlier than people are expecting because of the DH slot, right? He can still make Atlanta better without playing defense. I think that could put him in some games earlier than maybe some people are expecting, but I really expect a huge drop-off in his value with the stolen bases. I think it's a part of his game that's going to disappear. And I think there's a lot of people that value him over other players right now. And with his strikeout totals in a lot of formats, he's got to get dropped down that list a little bit, even without the injury moving forward.
And that's why I wanted to pair these two guys together, because the big rub on Madrigal is he doesn't steal bases. So he's basically a one category guy with the potential to have his second category being runs, which also makes him a point per game guy. Not a 3 point per game guy, which in points leagues also hurts you. Whereas Acuna was 5 categories of awesome. If your league counted strikeouts against, that was what hurt him. The average drop hurts. If he's not stealing bases, maybe there's a question. Now, I'm not saying I would be trading and dynasty keepers. No. This is just a for fun question. Next one up is super for fun and very lighthearted. Is Roberto Osuna going to be better, Ty, than Trevor Bauer in 2022? Roberto Osuna, just to be clear, has no contract.
So
and Trevor Bauer has a team that doesn't want him.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're asking me which one's going to end up with better stats, I think Osuna will be better with his Mexican League stats than.
Okay, so he's not coming back.
To be fair, though, the way things are trending, Trevor Bauer could end up on the same team. So that is very plausible. I mean, you and I both agree on this one. I don't see how Bauer doesn't end up playing in Major League Baseball this season, because if not, he's going to be suing a lot of people for a lot of money. I don't see how that's plausible. And whether things did or did not happen, that's not for us to judge. But I think contractually,
nor is it for MLB. That's the other part of this, right? Osuna, who was not found guilty of anything, served 80 games as a J. When he was done, the Jays just said, "Don't come back," and then traded him, and ended up trading him for Ken Giles and some other guys with Houston. With Trevor Bauer, which Osuna then played more than a year, right? Because he went to Houston, they won the World Series, and then he came back and played again. I don't know if there was another incident or anything like that. But with Trevor Bauer, charges, all that's all washed off, very much like Osuna, right? There should, in theory, be no grounds to suspend, but Bauer is now officially not in a position to play baseball games with the Dodgers.
Well, and just backtracking a little bit to the Houston question about the shortstop, we do have a suggestion coming in from Twitterverse. Our boy Graham here coming in with Jeremy Pena. Weird comment though about the great D.
I was gonna say you must have drafted him. You drafted him, didn't you, Graham?
Well, just the way this is phrased out though, we've got great D as like. Is like a question mark. Does he have a great D? Like, what is the?
Ty. We're talking right now about a couple of players who have been suspended.
That's why it's topical.
Questionable thing. Oh, that's why it's topical. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why I brought it in. He did kind of like stumble into it with his first comment. He double commented with the body, and then he went to the D. So I think that's pretty funny. And then he followed suit a little bit later as we're making fun of him with. It was when you were talking about the Houston shortstop. So yes, we did pick up on what you were putting down there. Took us a couple minutes to realize that you had dropped the comment in there. And he does play great D as he's confirmed. We're basically having a live on air conversation here, which is excellent. This is what we like to see. But I do agree there is D there, but I do think Houston desperately has to fill the offensive hole. And we talk about this all the time, like shortstop, catcher, center field prospects constantly getting overhyped because of the defense, right? And they're valued as a Major League Baseball player, not always as a fantasy asset in a lot of those formats. Now, the stats here for Pena are very reasonable. Last season, 297, 942 OPS, pretty good. 10 home runs, gap to gap kind of guy. So there's enough here realistically to expect a Major League tool. The one thing that always concerns me with middle prospects is, do we have one massive asset, whether it's the hit tool, the power, or speed? And we don't really necessarily have any of those at a higher level. So that's where you end up with a utility type guy long term. So could be a stopgap. I do agree with the opportunity there. I'm concerned long term with really 10 home runs being his minor league cap out. So something interesting to think about moving forward. Robbie, go ahead.
Also, just on that, I'm just looking at the potential construction of their lineup because I remember seeing it a little while ago where Chas McCormick is the potential center fielder with Jose Siri as a bench bat. But the difference here is Chas McCormick is not an offensive powerhouse, and the guy who's in front of him is Kyle Tucker. Like, the lineup is dynamic in Houston up to 6, and then it may fall off a cliff. So Jeremy Pena as an average guy wouldn't be the worst thing. But then you also have Martin Maldonado, who's like a at best 200 average guy. So there's going to be a lot of Kyle Tucker RBIs and very few Kyle Tucker runs, unless he's again doing that thing where he steals 30 bases and hits 30 home runs, or not again, but is able to do that. Jeremy Pena would be a pleasant surprise there, but that's why I believe Jose Siri has some room. Aledmys Diaz, the one-time Blue Jay, will not do enough to rock the boat. But again, Houston's got their own thing going on. They've got contractual situations that they need to deal with there too. So
I will admit that I did forget Aledmys Diaz was there, and that is a very reasonable stopgap if Correa goes. I forgot about that. Like, he's not going to be a stellar D guy, but I don't think Houston's winning formula is great defense. So I think that's an option.
Right, it's trash cans.
Option. Yeah.
Never forget. Hashtag never forget.
Hey, I draft all these guys, so I'll bring it on. Whatever edge you got to do to win.
The next question you are to throw to me.
It does say Rob in the notes. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Pick one for the next 3 years. No drops. Must start every week. Ooh. And it's one of your KC5. We've got Chris Bubik, Brady Singer, Lynch, Keller, and Cower?
Jackson Cower.
Yeah, I don't pronounce his name because I have never drafted him ever.
Well, one of the things that I loved about, I think it was the 19 draft with the Royals, was that they took Singer, Lynch, and Cower, and I was like, that's a smart, or sorry, maybe it was Bubik too. Doesn't matter. They did college. They had a big college pitching draft, and I thought that's a great way to like move guys up in the next 3 years. Well, they all have come up and in different ways failed. Brady Singer is absolutely not a fantasy darling. I think he has the potential to have more Ks. Daniel Lynch came up last year, and oh my God, you could not have had a worse, 3 starts where he got sent down? Like, I don't even think he got 4 innings. It was so bad. He was not in his zone. He was not able to do it. Chris Bubik is supposed to be a higher K guy, and we've talked about him on previous episodes. And then Brad Keller is a Rule 5 gem from years back who has been good and bad and is now just forgotten because the good that he had has been in pockets, and then there's been injuries at the end of, I think, the last 2 years. He's finished the year injured. So if I cannot drop the guy, if I have to start the guy, that means I'm worried a lot about the floor of the player. But Ty, I am also a crazy SOB. So I am going to go with Daniel Lynch from this group. I think Lynch has the ability to maybe hurt me for the least period of time over the next 3 years, but also offer me the highest ceiling of this group.
Yeah, and I would actually agree with you on that one. In the rare instance
the
that
rare
you and I are on the same page. Yeah.
Yikes. Well, let's get off to the next one. The next one I'm throwing to you, Ty. Christian Javier with Houston, Shane Baz with Tampa, and former number 1 overall pick Casey Mize with Detroit. Pick one for the next 3 years. They have to start every week for you. You are not allowed to drop them. Now, your options are much safer than mine. Not fair.
Well, that's the thing, though. Like, you pick crappy pitchers to fall in love with, and I like the ones that are actually good.
So, yeah, I still will not change my ways.
Yeah, after we finish a draft where you didn't draft a pitcher for like the first 18 rounds or whatever.
Hey, that's going to be a separate podcast. That the surf draft is going to be a separate podcast. Let's not discuss.
So this group is me. This is a really easy answer. It's for sure Shane Baz. It's not even close. I like all three of these guys. Not even close. I like all three of these guys a lot. All three of them I have multiple shares in multiple leagues. But Baz to me is the only one of them that I think has that special something, right? I think the other two are both really good and are above average starting pitchers. Baz is an ace, and we only saw a small sample of it last year. There's certain guys that just know how to pitch, and they know how to pitch in a way that's like, listen, I'm really good. We're just going to do this. I'm going to throw this by you, and you're going to get over it and go sit down. And Baz has that something to him. The other guys have to work a little bit harder to get it done.
Okay, I like that, Ty. I'm going to skip our next question for just a moment because I want to put a little bit more context for the listeners to it. So the next one, we're doing kind of a 5x5 at the moment. Yep. We're going to dip through, but I'm skipping the next one to get some more context. Yep.
Let me send it to you because the next one is more of a question that you answer. It's more of a category you hammer a lot harder than I do. So more stolen bases this season. Cedric Mullins or Miles Straw both had 30 in 2021. Who are you going with to win that title this year?
I will. So I didn't want to answer the question. I just wanted to ask it. I will take.
Oh, you wanted me? Okay, I can answer it if you want. You're the stolen base guy.
Well, I want to take Cedric Mullins because I hate Miles Straw and how Cleveland manages their outfield. Now you've tried to talk me down off of the Cleveland poor managing the outfield, but there is another player we're going to talk about later on who I think might insert himself and just like further jumble this all up before Cleveland ends up signing any kind of 1 year, I don't know, $3-5 million veteran. So I'm picking Mullins, who had one hell of a year last year, but we just keep hammering on the crappy teams. We've done it every year, Ty. We pick teams that we know are not going to be good, and we find players on those teams to kind of rally around for fantasy purposes. And Mullins last year was not on the radar and really put himself up there with three good categories. Stolen bases being a big unexpected one with a combination of 30 home runs because he had 30 of each. And the average was fine, but he wasn't able to get the RBI or the runs because the team around him just wasn't able to click. But Mullins will be my pick. Miles Straw, I'm just not into. He's going to be a guy that in 3 years I'll be like, you know what? I've just never had him on a roster.
And I'll be honest, I'll be exactly the same way when it comes to Miles Straw, but he's actually going to be the guy I would pick here for two reasons. One, he wasn't developed by Cleveland, so that gives him an automatic edge to be the best outfielder in Cleveland.
That's true. Good point.
And the second part is Cedric Mullins fouls off so many balls in MLB The Show that I just can't handle answering him. Question. I just want him to hit a ground ball at second base and be done with it. But he just
truth comes out
into the dugout, and I'm not happy about it. So
analysis you won't find anywhere else. Disliking a player simply because of what they do on a video game. Now you are playing these games, right, Ty? You are technically hitting the B button to
Well, I mean, I'm throwing the slider in on his hands and he just is somehow fighting it off, but you get the idea here. But at the same time, anyone that does play online on MLB The Show, how frustrating that is when you get a guy and he just fouls off 8 or 9 pitches. It drives you nuts. But anyway, next on the list here, more runs in this season. Two guys that are at the top of every board: Trey Turner, Fernando Tatis Jr. Robbie, who are you going with?
Well, I am going to go with your choice, which is Tatis, but I'm only going with your choice, Tatis, because I felt so good about Trey Turner being great last year, and the fact that I've just ridden the Turner train through the good and the bad. The one dynasty league that I have him in, he was a primary reason why I was able to get into the playoffs because my team just continued to get hurt. My outfield got worse by the week as September went on, or sorry, as August went on. And it was Trey Turner getting runs, doing all the things with the Dodgers, and then gaining second base eligibility was just huge. But Tatis is in the exact same position, right? Outfield eligible, shortstop eligible. And San Diego's just going to put him back out there until his shoulder is physically detached from his body and not reattached. He will be a run machine too.
He'll probably still hit more bombs than half the league with one arm.
Right. Yeah.
So
he's that good.
I mean, the reality is there's more Mexican food in Tatis, so I like him to win the runs category. But too much, too far. Okay.
We need sound effects.
I'm gonna pick Turner though, because I just think
what
the team around him is more likely to runs is more often a team stat than some of the other production stats. So I'm gonna bet on LA doing a better job of cashing Turner over the Padres cashing Tatis solely.
Okay. All right. So here's the one that I wanted to circle back to. So Ty, for you, more home runs in 2022, Tyler O'Neill, ya boy, or Teoscar Hernandez, also ya boy. O'Neill looks to be hitting out of the 3-hole this year. He had 34 home runs last year. Teoscar hitting out of the 4-hole this year, what we assume, and he had 32 last year. So this is already tight. Who you picking?
Yeah, that's a good one. I like both. I think the reality is Teoscar's just become a different hitter. I think he has a better hit tool in general. So I think O'Neill is going to stay on the sellout for power train more so than Teoscar, even though I think if you were to measure up their power grades, I think both of them are going to be pretty much on par. But I do think if I was to give an edge, it's going to be to O'Neill because, as I said, entering the last 3 seasons, his average should continue to improve. And the strikeout rate's going to be there for him. He's going to strike out. But I think we see a small reduction in it this year. And I think we'll see about the equivalent batting average. I think with an improvement in the overall contact rate is what I kind of expect out of O'Neill this season.
Okay. I feel like the loaded lineup that Toronto, boasts, and the fact that St. Louis is just that chug along, they're both, to me, the exact same type of lineup. It's just that Toronto appears to have dynamic players, whereas St. Louis just has consistency and studs and the veteran laden lineup. So it is neck and neck. I would give the edge to O'Neill in the fact that the other thing he does, especially if you're just trying to pick the player, O'Neill's going to be able to swipe you double-digit bags. And I know that's not what we're talking about, but as the fallback to him losing in that home run category will be the fact that I think it was 15 last year he had stolen bases. So I'm cool with that. Next one up, Ty, is fun and exciting for all of the kids at home because 2 years ago we would have been laughed out of the podcast sphere for making this comment, but now she's legit. O'Neill, great body. Thanks, Graham. O'Neill, great body. Well, speaking of great body and tight pants, Ty, who's going to have more Ks in 2022, Robbie Ray or Jacob deGrom?
I think for me, it's an obvious one with Jacob deGrom. I think Robbie Ray is going to disappoint a lot of fantasy owners this year. I think for a couple different reasons. He was very vulnerable down the stretch in Toronto, and you could tell the teams finally started to look for the fastball up. And the problem with Ray is the fastball slider combo down and in to the righties or low and away to the lefties is a phenomenal combination of pitches. Maybe the best 2-pitch combo in all of baseball. Kershaw did it for years in the same location, worked for both of them. The problem is he doesn't have enough of an offering to fool guys anywhere else in the zone. So I do think he's going to have a rude awakening, especially with the depth that's been added to that AL West. So next year, when they balance the schedule a little bit, maybe he gets away with it. But I do think he's going to be one of the bigger disappointments this season, just based on the hype around him. Not so much that he's going to be disappointing from where he probably should be in hype, but I think he's just overhyped entering this season.
Okay, now I'm taking Robbie Ray on this because I think he's going to just be steady Eddie. I know that Cliff Lee, when he was with Cleveland, was like an up and down guy. Will he not be what is expected of him? And then he eventually moved to the Phillies and became this elite, great. He was with Oswalt and Halladay and, won the World Series and all that stuff. He just stabilized. I feel like Robbie Ray is a similar type pitcher. Cole Hamels was also part of that group. Yeah, I think that's what's happening out in Seattle, is that Robbie Ray's part of this culture that's just going to be good. He's the veteran in, the successful veteran in that lineup, and I think he's going to be fine. Now, K-9 last year for Robbie Ray was 11.54, but like I said, he was a beast on the mound for innings, had 248 Ks. Jacob deGrom, K per 9 was 14.28, absolutely elite, like high-end RP elite, but from a starter. But his K total was only 146. So deGrom has health concerns, which are the big reason why I feel like this is a fair conversation to have. But tied to your point, you can't argue the fact that Robbie Ray just had a career year.
Yeah.
And Jacob deGrom is Jacob deGrom. So it's truly a coin flip. But if I'm just betting, for the dynasty and who you can acquire and, keeper league and all that stuff, Robbie Ray is the hot guy. But if you're a hot bod guy, as Graham would say, but if you're debating between the two, Ray's going to be the easier one to acquire. And I think the safer bet, even though I'm considering health a huge factor in that.
And we have talked about the Robbie Ray K per 9. Like, he's the career leader in K per 9 in starters with qualifying innings, right? So, those are things that matter. And he will strike people out. It's not going to disappear. Like I said, I think he's going to regress more to what his average is for him as opposed to what we saw last season. That's that simple.
Okay, so this one, Ty, is just an interesting one. And the more I've looked into it, the more I realized maybe it wasn't the best question when it was presented. But I think whoever it was, just kind of trying to find some third base guys. Who's going to have more strikeouts next year? Yoan Moncada, who looks to be out of the 2-hole with that loaded White Sox lineup, or Matt Chapman, who last year had near league leading 190 plus strikeouts. And the rumors of him going, I know it's like Matt Olson also, but of Chapman potentially ever being a Yankee. Imagine the lineup with Gallo and Chapman in it. The strikeouts would be north of 400. Anyway, Moncada last year, 25.5 K percentage was actually a career best. So
yeah, I think we're at a point now with Moncada where that 150 to 170 range is probably going to be where he lives in the strikeout category.
High, not devastating.
Yeah, right. I do think Chapman had probably the worst strikeout year of his career last year, and I think it has a little bit to do with the Athletics lineup construction. I think you just had a lack of protection. We've talked about this a bunch about guys that on bad teams that are great players that just don't have people behind them, so they try to do more than they should, and instead of having a great and consistent approach. I think Chapman fell into that trap a little bit. He also came off an injury, and I think he was trying to just carry his team a little bit more than he probably should have, and so I think especially if he's traded, less so if he stays in Oakland. I think if he's traded, I think you'll see an obvious regression. I just don't know that it's going to dip below 170 and into Moncada territory. So
yeah, I agree.
That goes to Chapman.
I think Moncada, because he had this similar, I think it must have been like Giolito year, right? Both guys did it at the same time, had these like terrible seasons, and then both rebounded the next. Moncada's just since been forgotten and buried by the hype of the next guy. Alec Bohm was going to change baseball and be this great guy. I don't know who said that, but maybe it was me. But anyway, he's just been forgotten. He's just going to be one of those guys that in 3-4 years, you're like, yeah, Moncada's put together a good stretch, but it's under the radar of outside the top 5 for third base. Whereas Matt Chapman is like in and out. And also Chapman came in with a boom, a ton of home runs, just like Rhys Hoskins did. I think it was 17 or 18. They both came in and did that. So again, if the K's are going the wrong way, we know what happens with those MLB players. They end up on Baltimore and their last name is Odor. So that could be Chapman if things continue to go south. Next one up here, Ty, is just a for fun one. For fun, who will be the better man, Bailey Ober or Joe Ryan?
I hate this one because I hate both of these guys. I think both of them. I mean, Ober's a guy that I think is more under the radar. I think he has the chance to be a better buy. If you're looking to acquire a Minnesota pitcher, I think he'll cost you a lot less. I mean, everybody I think in the community, in the industry overall thinks Joe Ryan's probably gonna be the better of the two. I think that's a pretty clear favorite in this question. I'm not as sold on Joe Ryan as other people. I mean, his numbers are okay. There's no real alarming statistic from his minor league career. To me, this one's an eye test. I just don't love it as much as other people do. It just doesn't feel right. Like he's throwing the fastball at a percentage that's well above industry or league average. Like threw it 66% of the time last year in his time. I don't love that mix. And I know kind of fits the old Minnesota regime of throw it over and make them beat you. I just don't see the same things that other people do, because the grades on all of his other pitches fit my eye test. And we've seen it. Like, we've seen it time and time again. Guys that are fastball heavy, when they make it to the pros, just don't carry on the same way good pitch mix guys do. So for me, I'm going to go with Ober because I think he's cheaper, not because I think he's better. I just think it's an easier acquisition.
All right. And I would say on this point here, Tampa Bay is not known for trading away players that end up being really good.
Yep.
And Joe Ryan was traded last year from Tampa Bay. So that's just very quick. I didn't want to click on the page to find out more about the player. So I'm just going with that in my head. They get traded to Tampa Bay. Have a look. Yeah, he's bounced. Joe Ryan, you've been bounced. If you are not wanting to do the work and it's a Tampa Bay related thing, you can say, were they traded to Tampa Bay? I'm gonna trust it. Were they traded away from Tampa Bay? Okay, then the ceiling must be low. See Nate Lowe, right? Is that right? Nate Lowe?
Lau?
I will never get it right.
Which one are you talking about?
Texas. He was traded from Tampa to Texas, and now
Lowe.
So anyway, Nathaniel, we talked about him on a previous podcast. If you go to type in Nate, it doesn't come up. You have to type Nathaniel on Baseball Reference. But anyway, he's got 4 categories of potential usefulness. This is a huge year for him in Texas, but again, traded away. So, all right. Ty, here's a question here. My keeper league 5x5 12 team lets me keep 6 guys. That's close to our home league. I went with Devers, Judge, DeGrom, Nola, Ray, and Jared Kelenic. Oh, wow. Where am I short in categories? So off the top, he's got 3 and 3, but outfield absolutely needs to be addressed, because Jared Kelenic is not a lock for a whole lot, and both Judge and Devers are going to be solid for dingers, which can get you runs and RBI. So 100% you need stolen bases, my friend. And that's my suggestion here, is you need to focus on stolen bases and getting some starting outfielders. And if, depending on your draft, how you do it within the keepers, Connor Joe has become a pretty popular name to grab. But I would say Connor Joe's realistically like a 265 average, 70 runs, 70 RBI potential guy. You also want to look at other guys who can get you 10 stolen bases. You've got people like, for some reason, Ty, Kyle Lewis. Nobody likes Kyle Lewis anymore. You never did. Well, no, you did. You liked him the year he was good in 2020 because he was one of our top 50 dingers prospects. And then you said, I would like to get off this train now. Pavin Smith is another guy who's available late, lots of position eligibility. Michael Brantley, Jose Siri, who we talked about before, and then Stephen Kwan, who is with Cleveland. Those are my suggestions. Stephen Kwan, Ty, we were discussing before the podcast, is a Cleveland diamond in the rough who, according to Fangraphs roster resource, will start. And we've talked about this before. You can't trust it. There's always guys that get added. But when they're looking at the depth charts, they're like, here's the logical starter. So Stephen Kwan is an average guy who steals bases. And of course, depending on where he is in the lineup, could be a run machine. And if he's hitting, I don't know, like 6th or 7th for some reason, there could be some RBIs kicking around there, depending on how fast Bradley and Franmil Reyes are going to run. But Kwan is going to be available for you definitely late in drafts. And depending on what's going on with your actual draft date, you're going to get to see what's going on in spring training. And thankfully, we're going to get that. We're going to get a little bit of it to get an idea of what's reasonable to expect. So my thing would be focus on stolen bases. Like for your pitchers, I would say, obviously it's saves. You need to go get you some saves. And one of the things that I've been looking at are the teams that we don't think are going to win 90 games, but not the teams that we think are going to struggle to win 70. So you want to avoid the Pittsburgh, avoid the Baltimore, avoid the Washington, and you want to get yourself some decent looking closers, and probably do that early, because there's going to be outfielders available really late in your drafts. Ty, what are you thinking for this?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I echo everything. I will point this shine the light a little bit on the runs category. I think a lot of people make the assumption when you get the big power guys with Devers and Judge that the runs automatically come with that. And to some extent, there's some truth to that. But I do think that's an area where, as you get further into your draft, if you make that assumption you're covered in that category, I think you'll be a little disappointed with where you lie there. So I think all of what Robbie said, but I will just put a little bit more emphasis on cashing runs. And to me, I think runs are the cheapest category in 5x5 formats. I think everybody ignores it. And I think it's a great way to give yourself an edge, especially with that foundation that you have with those couple of guys there.
All right, there we go. Question here. Any advantage to prospects and MLB veterans in minor league camps early? So this is before the lockout was lifted. The guys playing now with MLB coaches watching might be in a great spot, but they'll need a spot on the 40-man, which will require a 60-day DL or a cut or something like that that's hard to come by in the season. So, Ty, do you think that there is an advantage to any of those guys? Dan Straley with Arizona would be an obvious one. He was able to do a normal offseason for himself after coming back from the KBO. He's with Arizona. He looks like the type of pitcher you take last in your league. But again, there's going to be major ERA and whip concerns, and he's not a high K guy. But what are your thoughts on anyone who got to be in minor league camp before the lockout ended?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know so much for the vets because I think they're going to be answering a lot of questions of the minor leaguers that they wouldn't normally have to do while they're trying to get back into shape and in a position where they can crack a major league roster. But I do think major advantage for all of the high end prospects that get a chance to work exactly or directly with the major league coaches. They don't really get that opportunity in a normal camp. They always get to cross over a little here and there, but to have complete dedication from the major league coaches to sit there and say, listen, like, you want to be, this guy in the pros, you got to do this, right? And it's great to hear it from minor league instructors. They're all very talented coaches, but to hear it from the boss, the one that feeds the philosophy through the organization, from a coaching perspective, I think is super important. And regardless of what position those guys find themselves at, it's goes without saying that there's benefit. And a lot of teams will bring in veteran guys for the purposes of working with the minor league guys, right? Like, that's a real thing that occurs in minor league camps. So I think there's an obvious advantage there. I think it impacts guys that are more in that like AA category that are a couple years away. I don't know that it's going to give you the edge guys on the cusp, because if you're on the cusp, you've clearly impressed somebody somewhere in the organization, and you've probably gotten a lot of extra attention that some of the other guys don't get. I think that's the big gap.
And you're only not on the 40-man because you didn't have to be put there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of your cross to bear, is the fact that you're going to just have to wait for an injury or opportunity.
I would look at a lot of the guys that are like those top prospects that kind of fell back, like a Simeon Woods Richardson would be a kind of guy that I would look at. That was a high end guy. Mackenzie Gore would be another guy that I think could probably benefit big time. Like those types, I think getting a little extra attention given the pedigree, I think will maybe shine through on the end of it.
Okay, so we need the listeners out there to understand that we appreciate them. And we had a listener, Steven, who gave us some very kind words on Twitter and said, can you guys help me out? And he did commit one of the fantasy baseball sins, which is he took a screenshot of his roster and sent it to us. But he said, can you help me, guys? So we said, of course we can, because we appreciate you. So Steven said he's 16-team dynasty startup, 5x5 OBP and quality starts, 5 outfielders, a middle infielder, a corner outfielder, 9 pitchers. So not starting pitchers and relief pitchers, just 9 pitchers, but they have to have 35 innings pitched. 6 bench spots, 10 minors, which is pretty small for your backup guys. And he is saying 2 regulars that might be dropped when some of his minor league players come up. So who can we find on his roster that he would drop? Because he's got some guys in his minors like Alec Thomas, Joe Adell, Nick Lodolo, and Cade Cavalli. When they come up, who are some borderline guys on his roster? Now, this again is a 16-team league. So Ty, you're looking. I'm going to rhyme off some of the guys on this roster. It's a pretty good roster. He's got Alizé from the Cubs as a pitcher, Burns, Patino, the Thundering Oak, as we like to call him here. Rodriguez now with Detroit. Tariq Skubal with Detroit. Marcus Stroman, Roto Ronnie's favorite pitcher. Brandon Woodruff with Milwaukee. $47 million pitcher in one of my dynasty auction leagues. That's what he went for, Ty. 47 million of a possible 212. Yeah,
Sweet.
big investment there. Jordan Romano closing it down, who I think Romano is poised for a big year. And then he's got some hitters here. He's got Grandal, Bell, Brandon Lau with I hate that I can't get the right lows and lows, but
I want to correct you, but I don't.
Right, you don't know either.
No, I don't want to correct you.
Oh, okay.
I want to watch you continue to struggle over it.
All right. Justin Turner with the Dodgers, Gleyber Torres. Oh no, there's another low. Nathaniel Lowe with Texas, Amid Rosario, Harrison Beta, the Master Beta, Benintendi, Kyle Isabel. Continuing on, he does have Stephen Kwan. He's got Cedric Mullins, Tommy Edman, and Walker with St. Louis. So, Ty, of the list of veteran type dudes, of which I'm going to assume Stephen Kwan, as he's in the starting lineup, is one of those veteran guys. Who do you think might be somebody to move in this lineup? It's pretty big. So guys that you think are on the outs in a 16-teamer, which is very close to our home league size.
Yeah, it's a tough one because this is a surprisingly good lineup for this question, to be honest. For me, I think without some improvement in the pitch mix, I think Tariq Skubal's a guy that I think you could replace. I think that one's probably the easiest one of the group. And I mean, frankly, you have a really tough decision, right? Like Albert Alzolay is a guy that I like, but also terrifies me because he does have some upside, but there is no guarantee he is going to be the guy everybody wants him to be. So those are the two I'd look at on the pitching side. I think Skubal's the easiest guy across the whole roster to get rid of for me. The offense is really tough because it's pretty strong. And this one will hurt you, Robbie. I honestly think I would look at Bader.
No.
I think he's the easiest guy to replace in a draft and free agency. You've got Alec Thomas, who I think is going to be a guy very early this season, Joe Adell as well. So I think based on the guys that are coming up, and I think you'll see both Thomas and Adell really this season, Joe Adell probably to open the year. I think Alec Thomas very early as well. But I do think that allows you to get rid of Bader because you have those two guys coming.
Well, if I'm dropping an outfielder, I'm immediately dropping Isbell from KC. The OBP is just over 312 last year. I'm assuming that's what it was last year. It's not the projection for this year. So if it's the projection, I apologize for being incorrect on it. But it looked about right because I think he only had 200 and some at bats. It looks here 229. So for me, I'm immediately dropping Isbell off that list. But if you're dropping two, what I don't see is consistency within stolen bases, which is normal, especially when you get into power hitters like Bell and Turner. They're not going to be those guys. They're the OBP machines for you, though. So if Kwan is potentially an OBP machine, Amid Rosario is a 15 steal guy with a lower OBP, mid like 300 in the teens, that I would look to replace at a middle infield spot. I would also suggest if you have to do it beforehand, I would pick the pitcher you think has the least upside over the next 2 years, which is probably Skubal. If you're like the K's from him, it's Alizé. So Ty's right on with it. But if you're concerned about what an organization can do to slow play somebody, it's Luis Patino. And the only reason that it's Patino is simply because we just don't know if Tampa Bay is going to give him the reins or not. Everybody else on here looks like a legit starter. It's just a matter of what are you going to get. And 4+ ERA from Patino last year, as well as the other guys that we've talked about, doesn't breed confidence. Marcus Stroman, you don't want to get rid of because you just want him in there not hurting you. So it's pick your poison in that sense. But if you can wait until a Lodolo or Cavelli come up, you can make that call and you don't have to get rid of a fielder, very much like Thomas or Adell if you were to get rid of a pitcher.
Well, and the big thing for me too with Isbell is I just think the ballpark suits his skill set. There was a major power spike at AAA last season, 15 home runs, which he has 3 minor league seasons, 29 home runs total, 21 collegiate home runs. What I like here is that you've got a hit tool with like mediocre power, which suits Kansas City's outfield, right? You've got a huge outfield there. I think there's a great tool there. If you're getting Isbell with the expectation of home runs, you're going to be disappointed. But I think if you're looking at a guy to pad some of the other categories, I like Isbell. And in Bader, for me, I'm just not a believer. And it's that simple. He's shown moments, and especially last year, where he can be a little bit more than what I think he is. But I just think, again, very similar to the Joe Ryan Olber question from earlier, I think Bader's just too expensive for the value upside, in my opinion.
Okay, we do have another question here, and it is draft related to that same roster. So, not sure. His question is, within this roster, not sure if he should be hammering out more prospects now or working on his bench. So, what do we think somebody with a roster looking like that should be doing with the rest of their dynasty draft? So, I asked and said, "Can you let me know what's going on?" This is a startup dynasty league for him here. What did he say? It was north of $300 to be in the league. How would he finish off a draft with a roster as such? So Jordan Walker was one of the prospects, and he basically said he doesn't have a bench or he doesn't have any minors. That's what he's been drafting. Yep. How do we do this? And I offered up the idea that I had put out on RobbieBaseball.com as well, which is a smart draft is a list of very soon to be MLBers and very far away projects, and you determine what exactly is a project in your mind. If it's a high school drafted guy, which I do not recommend, or a J2 guy who got a decent signing bonus. So I had said some names like Verling with Philly, Jose Siri with Houston, who's actually not well, he's kicked around long enough, but he's still a rookie. Killen with the White Sox, who had a pretty good finale in the fall league. Juan Yepes with St. Louis again. It was another fall league guy. River San Martin with St. Louis, with Cincinnati starting pitcher. And then some of the J2 guys with the high ceilings, like Roderick Arias with the Yankees, Wilman Diaz with the Dodgers, and Juan Ben Cho with St. Louis. So, Ty, what are your thoughts on a team like this? Of course, you need a bench, right? But I said to him, why don't you double it up and look at prospects who could actually be part of your bench?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would go for some power bats. Like AAA, AA power bats is where I would start in my outfield here. I think the infield is reasonably stable for a couple of years here. So I think what I would look at is, can I get a couple guys in the upper echelon of the power category? A guy like Joey Weimer in Milwaukee would be a guy that I would look
at. That.
Yeah, like I would maybe take a buy low on Peyton Burdick, who we've talked about a lot that we like in Miami. I think the power will continue to come for him a little bit. Those are the kind of guys that I would take a look at, like that kind of category of underpriced late bloomer power bats is I think the primary target I would have for this roster. And then I would go 4 or 5 years out. So I'd start looking at some of the J2 guys I can get into beyond that and start to maybe refill that infield, start to refill the starting rotation further away. That would be my target. I don't know if you have anything else on that one, Robbie. I'm going to look really quickly at my New York Met guy that I mentioned earlier because I forgot his name when we were going through that conversation. Robert Dominguez is a guy that was drafted in 19 out of Venezuela. Is a guy that I personally like. I think he has a lot to prove, and I don't think we've really seen the minor league hype from him just yet. So I think that's a guy further away that may be a good target.
Okay, so my big thought here was closes our category, so he's going to, saves our category, so he's going to need to look at some of those peripheral type guys. Now, we talked in a previous episode about some of the Jorge Alcalas of the world that you can get, and they're not going to hurt you in the meantime, but they could eventually become, or very soon become, closers on their teams, which is the case with Jordan Romano, right? 2020, he was not the closer. And 2021 started, he was not the closer. He became the closer through injury, through his own personal performance. So guys like that do not hurt. Now, we have the update here, Ty. He had 10 picks left. Here's what he did. It's a good mixed bag. So he went with your idea of the power bench, Bobby Bradley. He got prospect Kevin Alcantara with the Yankees, Ronnie Mauricio with the Mets, Yandy Diaz, a bench bat here, Ramon Urias, also my kind of guy, Colby White, Elias Diaz, a catcher, Tommy Romero, Aaron Zavala, who is a prospect with Texas, Josh Winder, Josh Naylor, likes the Joshes, Anthony Bender, Dylan Florio. I think it's a potential closer with Miami. I think that's great. And then obviously he was reading RobbieBaseball.com because he went with Dalton Kelly. And I don't know, Ty, are you a Seth Brown guy with Oakland? Potential DH for this year?
Yeah, I'm a huge Seth Brown guy.
He picked him up, and he said he had one pick left at the time that we finished off the conversation. So again, Stephen, greatly appreciate the kind words. Feel free, everybody, really, leave a 5-star rating review. I mean, why not, right? It's your favorite podcast hub. But we will break down your roster.
If you got burner accounts, use those too. Just keep it coming.
Burner, yeah. So that was that. So we've got 2-3 questions left. Now the next one here is our good friend Woody. If you don't know, haven't heard, don't listen to a whole bunch of podcasts. Woody is a friend of the fantasy baseball community. Great guy, and we are playing in a league with him at the moment, but a separate league. So
if I'm ever going to a conference, though, Woody's invited. If he's bringing cases of beer on the plane, you're always welcome to join any party, Woody.
Sorts out the 2 free bags by filling one with beer. I mean, could you ask for a better friend?
He might have filled both. Like he might have just wore 4 layers of clothes.
Well, if you brought cases of beer, there could have been free shirts in the beers.
That's right. So. Yeah. Great planning.
Yeah, three shirts and a koozie is what he showed up with, and 96 bottles of beer. Anyway, what he says here is his 15-team CBS Roto Dynasty only allowed to have 7 reserve spots and 25 minor leaguers. He has to get rid of 7 reserves because his bench is twice the size, obviously, and 7 minor leaguers. Now, we have looked at this already. We've had the spreadsheet up. Ty and I had discussed things beforehand here. So we are going to just talk about kind of the names to consider here. So he's got top end prospects like Lodolo, Cavelli, Simeon Woods, Richardson, Blake Walson. And then he's got guys like Bryce Jarvis, Gavin Williams with Cleveland, who was just drafted, and Griff McGarry also just drafted. Now he put the ETA on as 2025. Woody, we have it on insider information that Griff McGarry with the Phillies is going to be up in 2022. So thank you, Mason McRae. But anyway, those are the rookie pitchers he's also got in his minors. Adele is no longer a rookie, but he's sitting down there. Nick Prado, Helio Ramos, Alec Thomas, Dylan Dingler, Mason Martin, Brett Batty, Bryson Stott, Jordan Adams with the Angels, Robert Hassel III with San Diego, and Humberto Hernandez with Tampa Bay. Right off the hop, both Ty and I are like, damn, small leagues, amazing minor leaguers. This is not what 30 teamers have in their minor league system. Jordan Adams was an automatic cut for me. Humberto Hernandez with Tampa Bay is somebody else I would just let go. And that's not because I think they're lost causes. It's because of the format. You can always just go with next guy up. And if you don't think that Jordan Adams is going to fit in LA because you see Joe Adele, you see Brandon Marsh, you see that, what's his name? Salmon. Oh no, Trout, right. Trout. I see that Trout guy out there. You just know it's going to be hard for Adams to earn starting at bats. I mean, it's going to be hard for Joe Adele to earn starting at bats, but you need to believe in that former top prospect hype. And then if you do need to cut, I mean, you would have just picked up Griff McGarry, but if you need to throw somebody back in the player pool who no one else is going to care about, it's Griff McGarry. That's another guy. And when we were talking about guys that he currently has on his bench, he's got pitching reserves of Bubic, Andrew Chafin, Zach Davies, Danny Duffy, Gallegos with St. Louis, who looks like he's going to be the closer, Justin Steele with the Cubbies, who Ty mentioned off the hop, Garrett Whitlock, who penciled in as the closer, Tyler Gilbert, who's also a prospect but is currently on the bench with Arizona, and then Patrick Sandoval, the 2022 AL Cy Young Award winner. So obviously you're not getting rid of Bubic, you're not getting rid of Sandoval because there's the ceiling that I described earlier that you want. But Danny Duffy is in that wheelhouse of pain. Zach Davies is the same thing. Like, you can go and get that. Andrew Chafin with Oakland, you can go and get that off the waiver wire. Justin Steele is a question that Ty and I were both kind of pondering. What do you want to do with that? And then on the actual bench side, the hitter side, Bregman, just the way his roster worked out, Bregman's on the bench. This isn't a bench bat, of course. Brandon Marsh, again, must love those Angels. Jock Peterson, Pedro Severino with Milwaukee, and Brett Phillips. But when I looked at his starting lineup, Ty, he has Jonah Heim with Texas, and I thought, well, let's just say you're going to go and drop him, and you're going to put Severino in as a starter, and you're not going to need to carry 3 catchers, even in a 2-catcher league. Yeah. It's just not worth it because you should be able to find someone off waivers in a worst case scenario, especially because neither of the guys that he has will be studs. Kyle Raleigh's the other guy who he might not even start the year with Seattle. So, and then Chas McCormick, who we've discussed with Houston, I would consider cutting him because you have a whole lot of peripheral outfielders. So, Miles Straw's on the list. Put Miles Straw instead of your utility. Have him start. That's the list for me of cut guys here. Ty, it would be like McCormick, Peterson, Phillips, Chafin, Davies, Danny Duffy, and Jonah Heim as the big guys. And we already discussed the prospects. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of the guys to move off of here. I think, yeah, you mentioned Adams in the minors. That's an obvious one. The entire bullpen could go, theoretically. Like, all of the pitching reserves could go, including 2022 AL Cy Young Award winner Patrick Sandoval.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I'm not as high on him. Gallegos, for me, I think is overdrafted in a lot of formats because people are like, oh, he's going to be the closer. But there's a lot of good arms in that bullpen, including a guy that used to throw 104 with like 6 feet of tail. Jordan Hicks will be back this season, right? That's going to be an obvious competitor for that job. I just don't think Gallegos did enough to maintain that job or guarantee that job. When you
Alex
lost
Reyes was like,
well, that's what I was about to say.
Other save,
you lost it to Alex Reyes to start last season. So that right there alone puts you in a category of like, I don't know if you're going to be able to hold on to that. But it's just an interesting debate here, right? I mean, this is what we're doing. Garrett Whitlock's a guy I would hold on to. I actually think he's going to be a starter this year. Everyone still thinks he's a bullpen arm. I think they'll make the move here. He shockingly may start the season in AAA just to work on the pitch mix. Like, I think that's a very realistic outcome for Whitlock. I don't think it'll be long. I think we'll give him 5 or 6 starts just to make sure he's comfortable with the change of ask. And it also makes the assumption, what we talked about earlier, that they add some bullpen arms, which I think they will do here before the season starts. But the rest of that bullpen can go. I agree. Severino, honestly, is probably the better of the 3 catchers that they have here. Yeah, Cal Raleigh is a guy that can't hit enough to take advantage of his power. Heim is useless in almost all formats, so I think he goes bye-bye.
Can't wait till he's the top 10 catcher next year, and we're just eating it like we do with Zunino, and we just don't care. Because it's a damn catcher.
It's a catcher.
Like, what's the ceiling? 60-60 with 15?
You know what we need? We need to join a league that has 3 catchers in the starting lineup. That's what we really need. Let's do it.
You know what? I actually thought that it would be really fun, Ty, to do a 10-teamer, but we wouldn't do any hitting. It would only be relief pitcher. It would be a points league, only relief pitchers. So you give points, like you'd say, 5 points for a save, 3.5 for a hold, and then a K and an inning pitched and all that. Like you break it down. I thought that would be really, really fun. But then someone's like, SP Streamer does something similar to that. And I said, yeah, but we would pick like the good ones.
We just call it something different.
RP Streamer.
So here's what we should do, though, because this is really fun. We should have a league where you can only draft catchers, players with more than one position eligibility, and relief pitchers, and do 5x5.
I wonder what you can get out of that. That's interesting. So anyway, that wraps it up for you, Woody. Those are our suggestions. Of course, you've got to manage the roster as you see fit. And if you don't listen to us, obviously, you're going to lose. So anyway, the last one here, Ty, final question. We're going back to who is the better man segment, sponsored once again by Eddie Vedder. Final question. We need accountability. We need to be held accountable. We have to hold ourselves accountable, as Roto Ronnie has told me too many times. Who will be better in 2022? Connor Joe or Randall Grichuk?
Randall Grichuk. Not even close.
All right. Thanks for coming out, everybody. Thanks for playing.
Yeah, I don't think it's close. Randall Grichuk had a bad year last year. Still had a good season by most people's measuring stick, right? Like, that's the thing I've said for years here, is that I just don't get why everybody hates on Grichuk so much. Yeah, cool, he strikes out. Cool. Doesn't have the greatest batting average in the world. But he had 123 hits last year, 81 RBIs, right? And I said this, remember way back, Robbie, like a couple of years ago when everybody was dumping on JP Arencibia, right? And I made the comment about, cool, yeah, he sucked, he was annoying, but he had 80 RBIs out of the catcher position, right? And sometimes guys just catch runs and they hit a fly ball to left field, and that counts as an out, but they scored a run.
Well, and to stay accountable, Roto Ronnie drafted in the Surf League, which we will talk about. We are going to have an episode discussing that and all the details of it. He drafted Grichuk and then was mocking you and I for him drafting him when I said that was really early. He drafted him like 300th overall in a redraft league, which is even higher than his dynasty stock would be these days. But again, because once upon a time we thought and discussed the fact that there was potential here for Grichuk to really break out, especially when the Jays said, sign right here, 5 years, $50 million. We believe in you. It gave reason to believe that there was some long-term Grichuk love to be had. So anyway, that's it. That's the mailbag, Ty. That was solid. That was good. That was fun. Our 90-minute episode seemed to just continue.
Yep. It's our thing.
It's now our thing.
Yeah. For those of you that have to commute every morning and listen to us, we love you. Drive
You're
safe.
welcome. You're welcome for 90 minutes.
Yeah, wear your seatbelt.
What do you think that has to be said? Really?
I don't know.
I think it would be less Baileys, a little less Baileys on the drive-in.
I mean, like, here's the real thing. Like, if they're listening to us, are they really a safe human? I don't know. We have to ask those questions.
They are a smart people.
Yeah, that's right. So, maybe they're more efficient with their time, and putting a seatbelt on is too much use of time. So who knows? There's a lot of things that need to be asked, right? So, but that's a great spot to leave it. Love you guys. It's baseball season. Let's get after it. And until next time, it's Rob and Tyler here on Dingers.